The great pleasure in welcoming the Prime Minister of Canada, His Excellency Stephen Harper. I invite him to address the General Assembly.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, Secretary General, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It has now been more than 65 years since the nations of the world, exhausted and in some cases devastated by years of war, established the United Nations. Canada was one of those nations, one of the many, in fact, whose fresh experience of conflict had persuaded its people that the possibility of a better world, one in which nations resolved their differences peacefully, was an objective worthy of their every effort. Today, the Canadian people continue to believe in this purpose and continue to strive to live by the principles that would make it possible.
Are enshrined in the charter of this organization, that same UN charter endorsed with happiness and hope by a former Canadian government on that auspicious June day in San Francisco in 1945. These foundational beliefs recognize the sovereign equality of countries. They remind us of the obligation to settle disputes peacefully, and they demand we seek justice and uphold the human rights of all people. These are values that Canadians hold dear, and as the universal membership of this body implies, so do peoples the world over. This widespread consensus continues to convince the idealist in all of us that so much more is possible in this world of ours. At the same time, it makes the gap between aspiration and achievement so disappointing. It calls us onward to do more, as successive Canadian governments have worked diligently to do for almost a lifetime. These ideals, as well as an acute awareness of the broad concerns of the international community, especially those of developing countries, continue to animate the Government of Canada, the government that I lead today. Et ces idéaux ont le soutien enthousiaste.
All these ideals have the willing and enthusiastic support of the Canadian people, and I do not foresee any day or any circumstances in which we shall cease in our endeavours. The question, as always, is how this is to be done. Our preference is to take meaningful action, action that produces real results, action that helps real people in their struggle with oppression, with disasters, and with poverty.
Through some of those actions. As a founding member of the UN and its seventh largest contributor to its finances, Canada has been a consistently reliable and responsible participant in UN initiatives around the world. This was so in the earliest days of the United Nations. It was so during the difficult days of the Cold War, of decolonization, and of the struggle against apartheid, and it remains so today. Canada continues to pay, for instance, a heavy price to fulfill our UN obligation to support the lawful government of Afghanistan. We pay it with the resources of the Canadian taxpayers, but more profoundly, with the sorrow in the priceless lives of our young men and women who serve there in the Canadian forces, as well as, sadly, civilians who have also given their sweat and their lives in the service of both our country and the people of Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, our military efforts have gone hand in hand with our reconstruction and development programs. In particular, Canada supports those such as the Dalla Dam, which will have enduring economic benefit. Et nous avons aussi
And we have also invested heavily in others which will improve the lives of that country's most vulnerable citizens, and we will continue to do so. Our international engagement is by no means restricted to Afghanistan. In fact, Elsewhere in the world, we've also expanded our efforts. We pledged to double our aid to Africa, making Canada a leader in the G8 by fulfilling this commitment.
To double our overall development assistance by March of next year. Furthermore, we have untied food aid, and all Canadian aid will be untied by 2013. Such measures significantly extend the purchasing power of Canadian aid funds. Canada was also among the first last year at L'Aquila to double support for agricultural development. During the economic crisis as well, we have acted in concert with G20 partners to increase the lending capacity of development organizations like the Inter-American Development Bank and the African Development Bank. In particular, we have made a significant contribution to peace and security in Africa, including to peace initiatives, humanitarian assistance, and reconstruction in Sudan since taking office in January 2006.
Canada has also given leadership to building peace in Sierra Leone. As you all know, we have also welcome strongly the resumption of talks between Israel and Palestine, and Canada sincerely hopes that the discussions will be successful, and Canada will continue to support the Palestinian authorities in building its institutions. And we are very extensively engaged in Haiti, both before and since the terrible earthquake earlier this year. Canada was among the first nations to provide tangible, appropriate emergency relief through a wide range of measures, and it has made a long-term commitment to assisting the people of Haiti in rebuilding their severely damaged country. Most recently, as Pakistan has been facing devastating floods, Canada has again responded swiftly. These actions are born from Canadian ideals. So allow me to say one thing. This Assembly should know that Canada is eligible to serve on the Security Council, and if we are elected, we will be ready to serve.
Serve on the Security Council. Canada will be informed by these ideals and strive to further them, just as we have striven to implement Security Council resolutions. I should also mention Canada's role this year as chair of the G8 and host of the most recent meeting of the G20. We've tried to ensure that these gatherings serve the broader interests of the entire global community. In preparation for the G20, we conducted wide-ranging outreach sessions, including with the Secretaries General of the Commonwealth, the Francophonie, and of course, this organization. We used our chairmanship of the G8 to reach out to leaders from Africa and the Americas, and to secure an agreement to enact the Muskoka Initiative for maternal, newborn, and child health.
Such progress is literally vital in meeting the most achievable of the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, to reduce the appalling mortality among mothers and children in developing countries. We are mobilizing support from donor nations as well as private foundations. Together, I anticipate that we will mobilize more than $10 billion over 5 years. This will contribute in a major way to the Secretary General's global strategy for women's and children's health. Likewise, we announced here 2 days ago that Canadian taxpayers would make an enhanced replenishment of the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria.
These things for one simple reason: to alleviate the suffering and indeed save the lives of people all over the world who are among the millions afflicted with these grave and debilitating diseases. Actions such as these are a moral imperative. It is essential that we strive to make a significant actual difference in the lives of the world's most disadvantaged people, who, seeing his neighbor distressed, will pass by on the other side of the road. That is why we have also used our chairmanship of the G8 to further the essential ethic of accountability. We published the first accountability report to ensure that as donor countries, we fulfill the pledges that we make. Our words must be translated into action, and we must make a real difference to those who need our help. And to that end, as many of you also know, Canadian taxpayers have forgiven debts totaling $1 billion owed by the world's poorest countries. However, let us not limit our horizons by looking just at the least we can do. Much higher goals are within our capacity if we will but reach for them. In the short time that I have with you today, there is one thought above all others that I wish to share with you. C'est l'impérieux.
It is the pressing need in the 21st century for all states of the world to adopt an enlightened view of sovereignty. As I have said earlier, respect for sovereignty is a foundational principle of the United Nations. However, the global recession of the past 2 years has hopefully taught us a painful lesson. We have been forcefully reminded that in this shrinking world, we travel together in one boat and not as solo voyagers, and that how we travel together matters, because our interests are all interconnected, from climate change to health and pandemic threats, and to, of course, the global economy.
Nations that do not consider the effects of their economic choices on others may not only hurt their trading partners, but themselves as well. Those who succumb to the lure of protectionism soon find that